The development of carbon agroforests on a large enough scale will first of all make all 8 billion humans thrive, but also solve all or most of these 8 billion humans' actual challenges, especially their climate-related challenges, and all this at the same time. Rather than being the main objective, the solving of challenges will be a beneficial side effect of the development of the carbon agroforests that is needed to make all 8 billion humans thrive. Another beneficial side effect of the development of the carbon agroforest includes, amongst many others, the zeroing out on the massive burning of fossils, as well as the consequential yearly carbon dioxide emissions of roughly 37 billion tons of carbon dioxide, as well as the also consequential emissions of the crude oil-associated toxins and or particles. All this zeroing out of undesirable side effects of a fossil fuel and traditional agriculture-based economy will be zeroed out, and this merely as a side effect of the development of carbon agroforests, and this without any effort or investment. Thriving and solving, or realizing a kind of horn of abundance. While solving all or part of our challenges would be a great thing to achieve, we can and consequently should do much better. This is especially so, since the solving of challenges takes place as a side effect of the development of carbon agroforests, and as said without any effort or investment. Instead of focusing only or specifically on carbon dioxide emissions, we instead prefer to focus on the development of carbon agroforests, which has one further side effect, and that is the regeneration of all types of soils, and indirectly the climate regulation capacity of the land with vegetation, especially so with carbon agroforest, this to a much more ideal level. This climate regulation capacity of soil and agricultural vegetation became and remained too weak, or at best suboptimal. Resumed, our focus is on human thriving by means of the enormous potential of well-managed and efficiently harvested carbon agroforest. Next, and as a side effect, on regenerating the enormous climate regulation capacity of the now regenerating soils with maturing carbon agroforests, this while also offsetting all other challenges, as said also a side effect. And without any other or additional effort or investment. Aiming for only the essential, without distractions, nevertheless without taking even our unimproved situation for granted. As explained in other videos, and to place things in context, 1 billion hectares is roughly 1/13th part of all the world's agricultural lands. 1 billion hectares also is roughly a seventh of Europe. Ideally, these carbon agroforests would be located in the tropics and subtropics, amongst several others for reasons of production capacity, but these carbon agroforests also could be more evenly spread out over the world. The reason why the location of the carbon agroforests in the tropics and subtropics is the ideal is explained later in this video and in other videos. 1 billion hectares of carbon agroforest will make all humans thrive as never before and solve all their challenges, and also reduce calamities to the minimum possible, this mainly and kind of automatically by the local and global climate regulating function these carbon agroforests automatically and independently exert. Further, this amount of carbon agroforest will produce all the foods, fuels, energy, and materials that all 8 billion humans need, and still more. This amount of carbon agroforest makes industrial port zones and industrial zones in general obsolete, and this offers a chance to transform these industrial port zones and industrial zones in general to more agroforests, or to more and greener cities or residential areas. By these carbon agroforests generated wide variety of products and services, all will be organic and renewable and free of toxics, further and almost consequently they will be less prejudicial, or more beneficial for health, quality of life, as well as life expectancy, this amongst many others. In the actual fossil fuel-based economies, this especially so when in combination with traditional agriculture, a connection between industrial zones and ports is essential, and kind of mandatory. Obviously, such industrial port zones had and still have huge impacts. Especially together with traditional agriculture, they are related to the bulk of transport, but severely limit the way transport can happen, while also causing huge inefficiency and risks, and most of the delays. Transition to a carbon agroforest economy, especially so in the tropics and subtropics, would allow for much less transport, and much less unnecessary or redundant transport, and especially much less transoceanic and transhemispherical transport, which provingly are amongst the most vulnerable transports and parts of most if not all production cycles. The here proposed transition to a kind of global carbon agroforest economy, with the carbon agroforest parts especially so in the tropics and subtropics, would allow for much more decentralized economies, and consequently and above all for more efficient economies and global economy, with much less costs and hazards related to transports. By the way, relatively less transport most probably is a key in the actual success of the Chinese and certain other non-global West economies. Massive, complex, and inefficient grain transports from the Southern Hemisphere to the Northern Hemisphere are a cause of consequential carbon dioxide emissions in the Northern Hemisphere, as well increase the spread, frequency, and intensity of now global calamities. European agricultural production and industry in general could fare quite similar or worse when compared to how the European automotive industry recently fared or still is faring. The bulk of ship transports from the Southern Hemisphere to the Northern Hemisphere consist of ore and feed for animal husbandry, meat and dairy production in the Northern Hemisphere. Massive grain transports from the Southern Hemisphere to the Northern Hemisphere to feed meat and dairy production-related animals are a massive burden for any capacity of our global food, fuel, energy, and material producing areas. These massive grain transports from the Southern Hemisphere to the Northern Hemisphere are the main cause for soil degeneration, its consequential carbon dioxide emissions, as well as the carbon dioxide emissions' extreme and unequal distribution, with focus for carbon dioxide accumulation in the Northern Hemisphere causing disruption of jet streams that become disruptive and cause calamities in both hemispheres. These same massive grain transports from the Southern Hemisphere to the Northern Hemisphere are disruptive for all kinds of traditional agriculture, and especially organic agriculture, and obviously also, at least initially, for eventual future carbon agroforests, especially in the Northern Hemisphere. The explanation of the latter is rather complex and is not the subject of this video. Carbon agroforest-based economies can relatively easily exclude or avoid all or most transport, in cases even local transport. An example of this is when in the carbon agroforests the prunings of trees and other vegetation are made directly available to more local mulching and compostation, as well as fed as a fresh and healthy feed to more local animals, this whether the reasons for the presence of animals are preservation, meat, dairy, or any other form of production. Obviously, the latter options would also avoid any kind of processing, and any eventual use of additional products. Once again, the carbon agroforest food and dairy production would be much cheaper, as well as organic and without toxics, and could as well cause the health benefits that are detected when certain humans or peoples that already consume carbon agroforest foods, like also in the case of the intensively researched semaine in Bolivia, who provingly present amongst others benefits the best heart and brain health of the world. Not aiming at the best or most global thriving or solving of challenges could become very disruptive and a cause of conflicts in any later point in time. The global West, if not the whole world, a while ago started to focus on avoiding or zeroing carbon dioxide emissions, as well as on the promotion of electrical vehicles. That led to a race, and/or to a push for electric cars. Seemingly, exactly that race or that push became disruptive for certain industries, and more specifically to the automotive sector, certain European countries and economies. Is the electrical vehicles industry the next industry to become obsolete? In the case of the development of a substantial area of carbon agroforests, most probably electrical vehicles would or could be the next industrial product to become obsolete. This for all the most important reasons. Internal combustion or ICE engine cars and vehicles running on renewable gasoline plus, or any other of the renewable and superior synthetic fuels, have the potential to become carbon dioxide emission negative, or in other words, have the potential to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, this while in any economy not based on carbon agroforests. Even provided that for the electrical vehicles used electricity exclusively is prevenient from renewable sources, that the theoretical best, or the very best any electrical vehicle can do, is becoming zero carbon dioxide emissive, but never carbon dioxide emission negative. In a carbon agroforest economy, existing internal combustion engine cars and vehicles are already produced and often in use, and consequently do not need to be produced and will not emit in order to produce them, and when newly produced their production will emit less carbon dioxide than in the case of the production of new electrical vehicles. Especially in combination with the also essential solar and wind systems and/or farms, this to support the intermittent production of solar and wind energy. Since this production is intermittent, also grid-scale batteries become essential and will need to be produced and maintained. In fact, the European Commission already supports the production of gasoline plus and other synthetic fuels in Europe and the rest of the world. If the European Commission intends to be consistent, they should be the first to support carbon agroforest development, especially so on degenerated agricultural lands, that otherwise would be very costly to maintain, this even so without any production. Apart from grains, There are other bulk cargoes from the southern to the northern hemispheres. Are there related industries also at risk? This is a very important question. While ores and animal feed are dominant, other key bulk products also are transported from the southern to northern hemisphere, including oil, gas, and refrigerated goods like fruit. All these transports and related industries in the northern hemisphere significantly increase the carbon dioxide emissions in the northern hemisphere, and further increase the already existing disproportion of carbon dioxide emission and carbon dioxide levels in the northern hemisphere. All these transports to the northern hemisphere, as well as their related industries in the northern hemisphere, significantly reduce the chances of success of carbon agroforests, organic agriculture, and certainly of traditional agriculture, in the northern hemisphere. This reduction of the chances of these land uses to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere also reduces the chances of reduction of the disproportion in carbon dioxide level between northern and southern hemisphere. Finally, what worries us before this eventually disrupting disproportion is the not well recognized destabilizing and consequential disruptive impact of the existing disproportion, plus the by these south to north transports accentuated disproportion in carbon dioxide level between northern and southern hemisphere, more specifically the consequential disruptive impact on the global jet stream stability, and the rather well-known causal effect jet stream instability and its consequential weakness has on calamities, this dominantly in the northern hemisphere. Since for any hemisphere, all jet stream stability and strength is important, and since the main northern hemisphere jet streams seem to turn more unstable, plus dislocate more often to the southern hemisphere, with a consequential around the globe disruption of the main jet stream in the northern hemisphere. A case of such dislocation from the main northern jet stream to the southern hemisphere and into the main southern hemisphere jet stream is shown on your screen, and the main location of dislocation is pointed out by a red arrow. The date of this pointed out dislocation across the equator is the 27th of May 2024, which is also the onset of one of the more seldom calamities in South America, in this case an unprecedented flood calamity in Rio Grande do Sul, in the extreme south of Brazil, which is pointed out by means of another arrow. While this particular crossover and dislocation is in the Pacific Ocean, it is of major and global importance and all indicates that it disrupts all major jet streams primarily across the northern hemisphere, as well as secondarily also across the southern hemisphere, and consequently disrupts climate across the planet. At the same time, major jets loaded with carbon dioxide of fossil origin from the northern hemisphere are thrown deep into the southern hemisphere, in fact also and clearly to the place of the here shown and described flood calamity in the extreme south of Brazil. These jets loaded with northern hemisphere carbon dioxide of fossil origin will ultimately reach even Antarctica, but first and most of all will overflow the southern hemisphere, in this case primarily South America, and as one of the last the Amazon forest. This is so, since the Amazon forest is a massive factor in removing any of the from the northern hemisphere massively incoming carbon dioxide. This out of the southern hemisphere atmosphere in first instance. Such dislocations were traditionally never, or not frequent, observed, described and reported by climatologists until rather recently, this so since jet stream are known to not cross the equator and to not cross the zone between 30 degrees north and 30 degrees south. Traditionally the 30 degrees latitudes are associated with the horse latitudes, which are subtropical high-pressure zones historically known for dry, calm conditions. Obviously and traditionally no major climatological events affected these latitudes, and obviously also did not cross them. This seemingly recent phenomenon of crossing over the equator is the subject of several other of our videos. The places of past major calamities have been affected for reasons related to jet streams, who in turn are related to the atmospheric circulation and the atmospheric cells. Hadley cells are the low latitude or next to the equator overturning circulations, that have air rising at the equator, meeting cooler air at roughly 30 degrees latitude, and double cooling air sinking at the same 30 degrees latitude. When this pattern is locally accentuated, like in this calamity in the extreme south of Brazil, a calamity can become evident. In this case in the extreme south of Brazil, the chances for the same event to be locally accentuated is above the medium for all other places at this roughly 30 degrees latitude. We present videos of what this particular place, as well as other similar places, can do locally, to prevent or to alleviate eventual future calamities. On a global level, we 8 billion humans should develop this in the first place in order for all 8 billion humans to thrive and solve or alleviate challenges in general, and in second instance to prevent or alleviate calamities globally. They should develop the in this channel proposed amount of carbon agroforests, preferentially around the equator or in between these 30 degrees latitudes. Or at least avoid the inefficient and costly transport from animal feed, from the southern Hemisphere to the Northern Hemisphere.